very quickly, thanks very much, Kate. Very quickly, I would like to introduce you to our panels today. So in an alphabetical order, we have Amber Dean. Sophie couldn't make it, so she sends her apologies. Chris Harding, Alex Main, Meryl McKay, and Natasha Simmons. Thanks very much. Please, if you can join us here, we can start our class. Thanks very much for joining us today. As I mentioned earlier in this session, today we are going to have a look at the library and information profession, but not in traditional roles or not in non-library roles. Natasha, Alex, Chris, Meryl, and Amber are all information professionals, and they see themselves as information professionals, but none of them work in a library, right? They have all done library studies before, or information management before, and but they are still information professionals, however, in non-library, non-traditional roles. I asked them to kindly share a bit of about themselves and why they see themselves as information professionals and how they relate the current role to what they studied at university in library and information studies. So hand over to you. We have 2 microphones, so we can start from here.
Okay.
After.
You want to go first? It's okay. Totally fine.
So we go through a, not quick, you have each 5 to 10 minutes to introduce yourselves, and then we can take questions from the floor and from our online session. Thanks very much.
Okay, so by way of background, well, my name's Amber Dean. So I work at a company called Peak Usability, and my role there is a senior consultant. Have you? Oh, not me. So maybe the company. Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is Hannah. Can I just pop it here? Oh, David. Yeah. Okay, so I've been asked to tell you a little bit about my background, how I understand myself as an information professional, and then how I relate it to the degree. So a little bit about my background and how I started out. So my original degree is a Bachelor of Psychology with honours in Org Psych, and I started out as a market researcher in 2000. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with market research, but it's lots of survey writing. You might, get the cringe, the calls between 6 and 8 p.m. But I was actually a researcher there. So I was doing a lot of survey writing, a lot of focus groups, one-on-one interviews, report writing, and general project management. So I did that for around 8 years in Australia, and then I decided I want to go overseas. So I started a role at a global market research company in Brussels, in Belgium. And as part of that role, I was responsible for managing a central knowledge base for a European head office. So at the time that I was there, they were moving CMS, their content management system, and migrating to SharePoint. So that's always a good time to relook at everything and how you're managing your information. So we were looking to provide a central online self-service point where clients could access international research information when they're writing international research proposals. So it was content range from country facts and stats, international research design and methodologies, client industry information, and a little bit about the company itself, so their fieldwork operational capabilities. And this was across, I think it was 80 countries, although we were particularly focused on Europe. So during this process, there was lots of information, and I became interested in how information was managed, and I saw how critical it was for the company, because if we pulled it off and clients could actually kind of self-serve and access some of this kind of pretty basic content that should have been online anyway. It would mean that our office could focus on more value-added services and not have to answer some of those other queries. We were a small team. So it was at this point that I started looking around for degrees. So as I thought it'd be an interesting career path and supplement what I was doing, and I settled on the CSU Information Management degree. So don't hold that against me. So throughout my degree, I learned about concepts like usability, user experience, information architecture, concepts I had never heard of before. And I'd learned about the greats like Jacob Nielsen, Peter Mulville, and Lewis Rosenfield, who actually have librarian backgrounds as well. And then when I relocated to Brisbane, I looked for a role in this area, and I think it was as simple as usability, Brisbane, and what companies came up. So I approached those companies, and I got a role at Peak as, and what we call ourselves at Peak is UXers, so user experience person, professional. So moving on to how I understand myself as an information professional. So we've just recently redone our bios at work, and I wrote, we have to write, something about that you're passionate about. And I wrote, Amber is passionate about making information accessible and experiences rewarding for users online. And I think that first part, making information accessible, is directly influenced from my information science degree. It's what it's all about. So, and I think that really is a defining point of difference in my field for those who've done an information science degree, that your lens of the world is focused on the accessibility of the information, and they're the skills that we bring to the table. But I work with people from lots of different backgrounds in my industry. So a graphic designer, for example, might have a different lens of, might be a bit more biased to making things. Is this not loud enough? No? Yes. Attach it up a little bit higher. Yep. Is that better? Okay. So a graphic designer might have a unique lens of, or probably bias to making things more visually appealing. We still want the same end goal of having rewarding user experiences online, but it's just your bias and the skills that you bring to the table as well. So you're just coming at it from a different angle. So how I would relate this back to my degree. So basically I think everything that I learnt in my information science degree is either directly or indirectly relevant to the work that I do today. So I learn about things like user needs, information seeking behaviours, Web 2.0, information architecture, usability, knowledge economies, and also research skills, which I also had from the psych background. And that's something that I do every day, that we're researching user needs and how people are accessing information. We're designing information architectures, IAs. We're doing lots and lots of usability testing of sites, both pre and post launch. So it's very relevant. I have found though that I've had to articulate and demonstrate that my particular skill set is relevant in the workplace. So I've never had a manager or a client say, you know what, Amber, I've hired you for this job or this particular project because we really appreciate that you're a librarian and we like that background, except when it's a library client. So it's not that it's not appreciated, it's just that there's a need for you to promote your skill set. So I've got these skills. I know how to wireframe, I know how to do usability testing, I know how to design an IA, because they're all the things that you learn in your degree. Yeah.
Ended up today. I did a subject called Web Content Reliability. I think you did that one.
I have no recollection.
You don't remember?
I may have done it, I don't know. It didn't click so
Well,
for you.
having an IT background in the library world, it was something that particularly interested me. And I discovered the world of content management systems and all of the rest of that. And I found library skills, particularly in cataloguing, classification and those taxonomies that Amber mentioned, particularly useful in structuring content within a website. And I did an assignment on how it might be possible to rebuild the school's corporate website and ended up doing a real life project for academic credit, double win, creating an intranet for the school. So I taught myself Joomla in about a weekend and built the system and moved on from there. And eventually I decided it was time to seek greener pastures where I would actually be paid appropriately because the school had incorrectly classified my role as the equivalent of a teacher aide. So that wasn't particularly good. And through that work and some research work for what was the head of school then, Helen Partridge, I was able to find my way into a role at the Department of Justice and Attorney General, who were creating a new website called WorkSafe Queensland from 4 original other websites: Workplace Health and Safety Queensland, the Electrical Safety Office, and the Workers' Comp Regulator, which were all government department websites, were being merged into the WorkCover Queensland website, all using the Squiz Matrix content management system, which I hadn't used until that date, so I have now. But the editing skills in a library course, a lot of reflecting, and I also have a mother who's an English teacher and a mother-in-law who was an English teacher, and my mother's still correcting my grammar, even though she's 75. But those skills became really helpful in managing a large volume of information that had to be sorted and categorised and put into the most appropriate place, and all done within a very quick time frame. And that role basically led me on to the role that I have now. But one of the interesting things that I've gotten to do recently, which isn't specifically related to web content editing, is that we had some funding to build a knowledge base. And we used the GovDex platform. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. The federal government provides a national platform using the Atlassian Confluence software for governments to collaborate and share information. And one of the things that we've been looking to do is to gather a lot of our training materials, a lot of our internal procedural materials, a lot of things about our style guide, how we would like external agencies to write for our website. To give you a little bit more information, the Business and Industry Portal, or the BIP as it's known for short, is one of the government's 17 franchise websites. So it's not a departmental website. The franchises are meant to gather information from whatever department into a single place, because the reasoning is people don't know what department they necessarily need to deal with when they're dealing with the government. They just know they want information for seniors. Well, they can go to the seniors franchise, and everything that they need, from medical information from the health department through to home and housing information from whichever acronym department that is, will all be gathered into the one place. You know, licensing information from TMR, that'll all be there. So of the 17 franchises, 16 of them, the content is aimed at the individual citizen. The BIP, on the other hand, is content specifically designed for businesses and or industry. So our style is somewhat different. Our focus is different, our audience is different. So to be able to provide information to our external distributed authors, because we have a number of agencies where staff members are actually able to enter content directly into our content management system. So being able to get that information out to them and be able to have them access it when they need it without having to ring somebody up is one of the reasons why the knowledge base has been created. So it's about to launch on an unsuspecting public. But yeah, so yeah, as I said, it was a subject that I did when I was upgrading to the master's degree that actually has been instrumental in where I've ended up today. And a lot of the skills that we possess in terms of sorting and classifying and information management skills have been really valuable in that particular project that I've worked on. So enough about me. One little thing that just pops to my mind. Kate was talking about doing craft and knitting. Very timely, because the Stitches and Craft Show opens tomorrow at the Brisbane Convention Centre. And runs till Sunday.
Yeah, let's get quiet. Well, I think you need the laptop.
Do I need the laptop?
Yeah.
You don't even know what's on it, but it looks impressive, doesn't it?
Why do we need
My name is. Why do I need the laptop?
Because that's the microphone.
I think that might not work yet.
Oh, right.
But maybe have it there just in case.
So it does make me look smart, but I do need it as well. Hi, I'm Chris Harding. Thanks very much. I probably took a jump, well, I did take a jump out of librarianship and went quite a different way. So I work in knowledge management. I'm a knowledge manager. Anyone come in contact with a knowledge manager or heard the term particularly? Yeah, here we go. These ladies will, for sure. There's a couple around the room. Most people say, what on earth do you do? I just say I know lots of things, but most importantly, I try and get other people to know lots of things and help each other understand what's going on in the organisation. I started out doing a Bachelor of Basket Weaving way back when in North Queensland. I did Bachelor of Arts in Japanese and Environmental Tourism, and I was going to be a tour guide speaking Japanese in a national park. And those jobs are about as rare as hen's wisdom teeth, so that never worked out. So instead I got a job at a library, at a little public library. My sister wrote my job application for me while I was on holiday spending my last 50 cents. And I got the damn job and I thought, what on earth am I going to do? I don't have purple hair or flat shoes. Got into it. Absolutely loved it. It was a country library, part of the state library system, and I stayed there for 3 or 4 years, and then I transferred down to another public library, and I started my studies as well. So I transferred down from North Queensland down to Western Brisbane somewhere, and started my grad dip in library and information studies because I really did like this stuff. I thought it was pretty cool. It wasn't just all reading books and drinking tea. There was a lot more to it, but I think that the common theme through everything I've done is it was about the people to me. I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed what I got to learn from people, the paths that they took me on to researching the old encyclopedias, and I still put my hand up because I wish I had one sometimes because I like that. Then I followed on and worked for a library software company after that, and that was a bit of fun too because I got to go around to different libraries and help them facilitate and implement new systems that they had that they were putting in. And I got my wheel really spun by, again, the people and training them and getting them involved in what they were doing, connecting people to the information that they needed, seeing the smiles on faces when people got what they wanted and what they really needed, and it would solve problems for them and enlighten people and give people somewhere great to come. So libraries are tremendously, tremendously soulful and heartening in that regard. So always in the public library sector, I did a little bit of stuff in reference libraries in unis just for coursework and so forth. When I came back from overseas doing library vendor work, I decided I would continue this. And I thought, how can I move this away from just the library stuff? And I decided, I've written here my little quote is, I really like people much more than I like cataloguing, taxonomies, metadata and copyright and that sort of stuff. So I thought, right, knowledge management, this is the new thing. I'm onto it. So I did my Masters of Information Management. It was a major in knowledge management through Curtin Uni. At that time, it was the only one that was available remotely. That was really worth its salt. So I went through and I did that, and I haven't looked back since. So I then went to work for the Bureau of Mining and Petroleum with the Department of Natural Resources and Mines. Yeah. For heaven's sake. Cataloguing and databasing all of the abandoned mine sites around Queensland. I thought, this is going to break my head. Then a job came up over at TEAS, which is on the other side of the river over here, and they're an engineering construction organisation. So I left the government and I think I ran as fast as I could. And I have thoroughly enjoyed the public sector ever since. So knowledge management to me is really about two very key things. One is the information that you have. So my foundations in everything I've done in my library information studies has obviously well set me for that. And then the people and the behaviour and what goes on up here. So if you draw a continuum and at one end you've got collect and the other end you've got connect, that's what I like to call my collect versus connect continuum, which was actually discovered by someone called Jeff Parcell and Chris Collison. If everyone a good read, get Learning to Fly. It's a little old, but it's still one of the best knowledge management texts that are out there. At one end, so we've got the collect stuff. A lot of people like to collect as much stuff as they can possibly get. You ladies would be all over this, and shove it somewhere. We've done it. Tick, right, private organisation, we've collected what we need, we've got all our procedures, everything we could possibly want. But is it trustworthy? Is it secure? Is it accessible? Can I find it quickly? Has it been renewed? Is it the right stuff at the right time for the right person? Does it suit me for my level of work that I do? So you can start putting some smarts in behind that with your systems, But you also need people involved in that. So what structures do you set up around that? What sort of custodianship do you have? What requirements of those custodians around the information that you've got? If you start slipping up the other end towards the connect side of life, you start looking at, well, how do we connect this information with that information over there and getting more, more relevance out of it? So I still work in professional services at the moment in engineering again. How do we connect some of our information that we've got around our bids with some pipeline and opportunities? So they're the jobs that may come up. There's going to be big infrastructure jobs in Queensland. How do we start connecting that with information we've got about clients over here and putting it together? Sparks fly, suddenly you've got a little bit more intelligent information out of what you had. So you've got all of your information, shoved it somewhere, you started to connect the dots between the information. Then if I start connecting the dots between the right person and the right information, you start adding a new dynamic to it. And then it gets really exciting, and my side of life that I love the most is down the connecting people to people. So how do we get what's going on in here, what you've done before, what you've learnt before, the experiences you've had, your cultural background, your upbringing, your schooling, all sorts of things come into the mix to change the way that you will interpret the information that you get, the way that you behave with other people, and the outcomes that you can come up with. So I work very much around learning before, during and after. I've predominantly worked, as I say, resources, oil and gas, engineering has been my career sector in the large part. Building large things, blowing up mine sites, building bridges, tunnels, all that sort of stuff. How can we learn before we do something? How can we learn during what we do? And how can we learn afterwards? And it's a continuous cycle, and it goes round and round and round. How can I get people to come together to use that information, use that knowledge that they've got up here in a great environment where they may want to come up with creative, problem-solving techniques? What sort of innovative solutions can they come up with, and can I create the environment and help them and lead them in that direction to be able to do that as well? So you start getting a lot more richness and value to not just the information that you've got, but the way that people work with that and do something out of it. I see myself as having to facilitate, we've got here collaborate, empower and encourage, sometimes bribe and cajole. Especially Jelly Beans and Freddo Frogs recently have been working too. It's a lot about trust and having people trust you. My key aim is to do myself out of a job, because I would like knowledge sharing, not knowledge management. I would like knowledge sharing behaviour to become just a normal way of life. And I do it with KM by stealth. I don't like having departments. I don't like having my own website around knowledge management, because acting in a knowledge sharing way should be integral in what you do. So again, in the industries that I work in, it's all about safety. Safety is first for everything. You have safety startup meetings for everything. You have safety briefings. You have safety debriefings. Knowledge should be the same. You always think to look up and live. You always think to dial before you dig. You always look, well, I do anyway, I always look for cables. Am I going to fall over them? And, have things being set out the right way in your workplace. Ask yourself 2 questions before you do anything. Has anyone else done this before? So go and find it, find them, find out what you can. Second question is, who else can benefit from what I'm about to do? So get in the next project team that's about to do what you're just finishing off. Get in, Bob Smith down from HR that was talking about doing SurveyMonkey, and I've just done a survey myself on SurveyMonkey, so I can help you out with it. So it's as simple as that, those 2 questions being built into your everyday behaviour that starts you thinking about what else can be done, who else can learn from it, and not reinventing the wheel all the time. So I've worked a lot in business systems as well. So business management systems are your methodology of how an organisation operates. It's not an IT system. I'm particularly, everyone's QUT passwords. I don't know if it needs that. Really? Sorry, we'll just check it. It wants a password. Will it still be working? Oh, okay, sorry. Technology, really. I really try. I try and remain agnostic to all of it. I've done a number of content management implementations and setups, but I look at it from what are the business requirements? How do you need to be able to search? What do you need to be able to get back? What processes have you got set up around the sides of the application to be able to make it work well? So knowledge management cuts across HR, learning and development, OD, a little bit of IT. I'll let them do the IT stuff, but I can talk enough about it. What has set me in good stead in the study that I've done is I do know the language. I do know how to build a metadata structure if I have to. I do understand taxonomy and build them if I have to. control language and control vocab. We use common language. In my businesses, we just use that terminology, and it's so everybody talks the same stuff. When I was working for Tees over the river over here, they were built up by geography. So they did mining, civil services, process, and another engineering, which escapes me at the moment, types of engineering, and they were doing it in New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia, Indonesia, and the Middle East. So they were doing mining 6 times over, and they're doing, building a bridge 6 different ways across the organisation. I said, well, why are you doing it like this? Let's look at what you do, what's your domain of knowledge, rather than who you do it for. So we changed it, and it became a discipline-based organisation. So you did mining across the entire organisation, you did civil across the entire organisation. Then we were able to build on that common language, because across, no matter where you were, the same word meant the same thing to everybody in your discipline. We were then able to set up structures of custodians around the information that we had, so it got reviewed, and processes, so it got reviewed at the right time. It was always accurate. You always knew who to go to get help. Then we set up communities of practice. I don't know if anyone's ever really dealt with that before. Communities of practice are groups of like-minded people, and they could problem solve. So I would facilitate that by setting them up with their workshops, how it all worked out, some techniques around how to get going. So that was a really good way to be able to set up environments where people could help each other, and we could speed up the processes that we could implement things in, because people across the organisation were talking to each other. We had a guy on a site in South Australia who didn't know he had a particular type of drill bit, and it was wearing down too fast, and it was a guy overnight in Indonesia who was able to solve the problem for him. And he's sitting on a mine site in the middle of South Australia that took, I kid you not, 3 days to get to by the time you flew from Sydney and Adelaide and bussed up and drove out. And you got his problem solved overnight. So those types of things really spin my wheel, and I think it's really exciting. But they're all built on good information, and they're all built on good systems that can deliver that information to people. But without the good systems, you can take the Mickey Mouse of anything to people. If you don't have your good processes and your good behaviours around it, they can fall over. So again, not everything can be written down. Who can ride a bike? Yeah, great. Who can tell me or write down a procedure for me on how to ride a bike? Come on, you can do 4 steps, surely. Hands on handlebars, leg over seat, bum on seat, feet on pedals. How do you write down how to balance? That stuff is the stuff that knowledge management starts to get a bit more excited about. How do you create mentoring programs, coaching one-on-ones, lessons learned, conversations, storytelling? So not everything can be written down. It needs to be where it can be. It needs to be accessible, as all of the great qualities about good information, but you can't forget about the other side of it as well. So that's the area of my life that I spend most of my time in. How do I relate my career to my degree? I think I've probably answered all questions in a roundabout kind of way. So, bit blah blah. I'm sorry about that. I get a bit excited about it. Thanks very much. You too can have a disco. Ooh. See if you can better that.
All right. I feel like I need to be sitting in front of this and doing something with it. Okay, so I'm Alex Main, and I currently work for Maurice Blackburn Lawyers as an information manager there. So I'm just going to, I suppose, talk to how I got to this point briefly, and then, yes, attempt to answer the questions about relating what I do back to my degree, but I didn't really read the brief properly, so I hadn't prepared, and I'll probably forget to talk about it, so sorry. So about 10 years ago, I was a soil scientist. I worked for the Department of Natural Resources, and I traipsed around the countryside digging holes and then taking that soil back and crushing it, and then weighing it, and then other people did experiments with that soil, and that was pretty much what I did. That was at the very beginning of my career, and that was really fun because I learned how to drive a four-wheel drive really well. I am very good at doing that. And I also learned that if you want oh, that's nice. Maybe I won't even bother. I like pictures, so I just did a slide deck of pictures, basically. All right. So, yeah, that's the kind of countryside I got to work in. It was really fun. But what I noticed when I wasn't having fun in the bush was that I'd get back to the office and we had these woolly bear scientists who'd been doing it for years, like 40 years career kind of length, going, putting together research papers, putting together all sorts of things to publish to the broader community, the scientific community, the civil society in which they have to be accountable to as public servants. And what they were doing is, I just remember noticing one day my supervisor like leaning down to this really rubbish box and popping around and bringing these mouldy old papers out and then starting to write a paper and thumbing through these papers. And I was like, what's that? And he said, oh, there's a farmer that I've got contacts with up at, Chinchilla who his shed flooded and he found all these records, and he was actually he worked for the department 50 years ago and he'd taken all these surveys of his countryside, and anyway, he kept them in a box somewhere and decided to give them to me when he, didn't want to work anymore. And I was like, Ben, that's really important information. You have no idea how you're organising that, do you? It's just in a box. And he's like, yeah, pretty much. That's like everything I work with. And it was at that point I was a bit like, oh, I feel like that's really risky. We're a government department. We probably need to have better management over that. And of course that led to the whole discussion in my mind about, oh, this is quite interesting actually. I wonder if we've got other data that we manage terribly. Turns out we did. And it was at that point I was like, I could probably do a bit of study around this, and that's how I got into the Masters of Information Management. So I started doing that, and concurrently I was like, well, if I'm going to be a big girl, I'm going to get a big girl job. So I left working for the Department of Natural Resources and I got a job with the Queensland State Archives in their government record keeping section. So I did a lot of work there around advising government record keepers on how to comply with the legislation, so the Public Records Act and the associated information standards. And that was really fun. I learnt a lot about records management as a profession, as a skill. And at the same time as doing my degree, I learnt a lot about the broader concepts of information management. And so it was during that period with Queensland State Archives that I was like, I think these are my people. I love these people. Like, information management, records management is super, super interesting. And I'm not even lying when I say that. I'm not being facetious. I actually think that managing information, practically speaking, can be kind of dull, but broader conceptually speaking, I think taking maybe a more postmodern view about it, I really enjoy the fact that we are helping people liberate themselves through access to information. I think it's really important to find information, to inform yourself and become a critical thinker in this world. And I think it really starts with having access to information. So I really loved being part of that. And I really liked it from a government perspective because I felt like it was shining a light on the records that are kept about you as individuals and your interaction with government. And so I absolutely loved the job. And it was around that time that I did a subject called Principles of Information Management, and Karen Middleton, not Karen Middleton, forgot her last name briefly, Karen. Anyway, Karen, I've mixed her up with Michael Middleton, but
Karen Nelson?
Karen Nelson, yeah, thank you, thanks Kate, no, that's good. Karen, it's funny, Karen's partner and my partner work together all the time, so I'm just having this total brain melt at the moment, but Karen really influenced me. I did the subject, I was like, managing information is really cool. Controlling language is amazing. Metadata schemes are great. Making sure that your systems talk to each other using the same language is the best thing in the world because you can find information. And it was really, really cool. So I especially loved it, and I think I really brought that to the work at the QSA because I was just so enthused about it. But then I realised that the role that was there wasn't really going to take me where I wanted to go. And it's all good to know about the ideas around record keeping and standards around record keeping, but I was like, I'm going to be an operational records manager. I'm getting a job as a records manager. And so I started working for the Queensland Nurses Union, which is the industrial body that takes care of the needs and rights of nurses in Queensland. And it was really, really special at the time because I think it took a lot of foresight for a trade union who is all about the rights of working people, and that's where their funds should go to, because people are members of these organisations. They pay fees to be members of these organisations. They had a bit of vision to actually hive off a little bit of that cash and resource a proper record keeping section. So we had really good records, which was really important for our organisers, because they could go into workplaces with an exceptional record of the interactions they've had with employers and lay it out on the table. You haven't been complying with this, you haven't been doing this, we've been getting along really well about this, we should keep working on these sorts of things. And they had the records in front of them. And it was a real honour to work for the organisation, develop their record keeping processes and frameworks, metadata schemes, taxonomies to enable that sort of work. So that was quite fun. Another thing we did at the Nurses Union that I quite, that's what it was like. It was very paper driven. Another thing that we did there was a software upgrade. So in terms of relating back to my degree, the subjects that I did that I think have been quite useful in my time in my working career have very much been around relational databases, information architecture, and enterprise architecture. So I've learnt, I don't think I could do my job without knowing how a database works. And I think that is a really valuable skill if you want to work in the information sector in any way, to really just understand at some level how databases operate. This is my favourite slide. Anyway, so at the Nurses Union, it was great, but I was the only one in the village. I had a small staff, but I was finding it quite difficult to work, and I knew my career wasn't going to progress at that point. And there was a librarian there who was probably about 700 years old and wasn't looking like she was going to retire from her job anytime soon. So there was no way that I could move up the food chain at that point. Maybe 700 is a bit old, but she was at least 80. She would never tell anyone her age, and she was a bit magic about that, but I'm pretty sure she was at least 80. She was fabulous. Probably is fabulous. She's probably still going. So anyway, this very interesting opportunity came up at Maurice Blackburn to join their team, their knowledge management team, and I figured, I may as well give it a crack. And so I moved over there knowing not what I was getting into, and this role that I went into was essentially a business analyst role. So I very much learnt the value of understanding requirements, and that was something that I think was very much devoid in my work life before then, because when you work for government, you basically think you know everything. You think you're writing standards, you're looking at international best practice, and you're trying to apply it to your work in the Queensland government. And I think that's really good and very important. But what I've really loved about working for Maurice Blackburn is that I interface with the business. So I'm just some nerd who is in the knowledge and information team, and that's fine. But the real skill that I take to my work is working in the information and knowledge team, but interacting with the business and finding out, what do you do and what do you need from an information management perspective to support the work that you do. And so for the last couple of years, I've spent my time understanding business process, understanding legal process, and then using that understanding to develop systems and processes that support what they do. And one of the really big examples, I think, is we have a class actions team, and they take on big companies that are misleading their shareholders. They take on corporations that have not maintained power poles that have been found to be the cause of massive bushfires in Victoria, and you've heard this one already, so sorry about that. And my role was to sit down and understand an administration process. So when we settled the bushfires case a few years ago, we had to then administer, as a firm, the compensation scheme for people who suffered loss and injury throughout those bushfires as a result of negligence of somebody else. So what I had to do was understand how that assessment process was to work, and understand the stakeholders and what their needs were, understand the information flows, understand the document requirements, all these sorts of systems and information things, and then pull it together to create a three-part system in which people who suffered loss registered their intention to be part of the class action in the settlement process. And then we had to, so that was an outward facing website. It had to connect with our internal matter management system so that the lawyers and the paralegals could process these applications, and then we had to have a collaboration system with a bunch of barristers who were the people who were assessing the claims of the people who had registered that first part of the process. So there's a lot of business analysis going on there, and it's one of the best things I've been involved in because very soon we're about to start paying these people, and it's taken a very long time to get here because there are thousands of people who are affected by this particular negligence. But I'm really proud to say that I was actively involved in, developing support processes to enable them to get their compensation that they well and truly deserved. So that, but now my role has changed a little bit, and I've moved into an information manager role. So I'm not doing practice support so much anymore. What I'm doing is basically making sure that our information management is a concept that touches the whole organisation. So we're particularly keen on making sure that we base all of our information systems and processes in an exceptional taxonomy framework. And I'm so excited about that. So, when I was at the Nurses Union, I had a lot of time to think about controlled language and classification schemes and those things, and I really liked that. And for the last couple of years, I haven't really been given that opportunity to work in that space. But this year, now that we've got a proper business plan, this is my plan on a page here, and I've got RuPaul just encouraging me to keep on going. She's very helpful. I'm sort of responsible for the information and knowledge areas, and my colleagues are sort of more on the process side. So my plan on a page is basically getting these 4 pillars up and running, and the focus points we've got for information management is to create a good central point of information everyone knows as an intranet. And some people like to call their intranet names, but we're calling our intranet the intranet, and that's functional and helpful.
Not Gandalf.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And then the intranet plus a functional platform for knowledge management is going to be very much underpinned by our taxonomy framework, which feeds into Good Search, and that's the starting point. So at the moment, I'm developing taxonomies for area of practice, legal topic, document type, all sorts of things. If you want to filter it out, we're going to basically create a taxonomy for it, which, all that comes into a broader metadata scheme. And I'm just loving it. The other day I had a fight with somebody about the difference between practice area and area of practice as a concept. And, I would jump over the table and fight with somebody about it. It was so much fun. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. And if I just think about it in the context of the skills I've learned through my experience and through my degree, fundamentally, I don't think I could do the job I do without having been to QUT and having done the Masters of Information Management, because I think the subject, especially information management, making me think about the way information flows through an organisation and how it enables so many processes in an organisation, was really, really, important in motivating me in the work that I do and helping me understand what I really like. But then other subjects like the database subject, I can't remember what it's called, but that was really, really important. What else? I think that the skills you learn at university to analyse things are really important. So I know they're a more generic skill, but I think I've become a much more analytical person since coming to uni because I've had to really think about problems and break them down. And but you know what? Despite like learning how to create controlled vocabularies and relational databases and those sort of hard skills, the one and most important skill I think I got, and I don't think I got it from QUT, is how to build relationships and how to keep relationships. And that fundamentally in a service role such as my own, where you're constantly learning about a business, you've really got to make good relationships. So I just spend a lot of time like schmoozing up to people, talking to people about what they like doing. I'll have an hour-long meeting, and 10 minutes of that will be just talking about what their kids got up to on the weekend and things like that. So I really, really enjoy the work that I do, but if I didn't have a well-developed skill base and knowledge in relationship making, I don't think I'd be able to do that work. Thank you.
Ali, is there any way I can do this standing up?
Yeah.
I'm not a very good sit-down talker, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Need the diaphragms. Stand up here?
Or do you want to stand up?
Yes, okay. Right. Is that okay? Okay, so hi everybody, and now I can see you all, which is really good, except for those online, I can't see, but hello. I'm Natasha Simon, so I work as a research data management specialist with the Australian National Data Service, and I sit over at Griffith University, but I'm not there a lot because I do a lot of travel as part of my job. But I want to talk a little bit about what I've done and a little bit about my organisation and a little bit about data librarianship as a possible career choice that you may or may not have considered. But first of all, let's ask if anyone has actually heard of data librarianship as a career. Anybody has? Somebody has? Yep. What about ANZ? Has anyone heard of ANZ? Yep, you have as well. Okay, that's good. So one person at least, anyway. And for the rest of you, you'll learn something new then, I hope. A number of years ago, I found myself at QUT actually studying a Masters of Information Technology, and I was working for an IT company, and I was about halfway through the degree, and I decided I just really hated it. And it wasn't the coding, because we were doing Java and networks and all kinds of other things. I actually really liked that side. I was actually working for an IT company that I didn't like, and it was because there was a lot of falsifying of information that went on there in order to get contracts. So sort of lying really about staff and capacity and blowing things out of budget, and a lot of things that really bothered me about withholding information. So I quit that job without another one to go to. And my partner went, yes, I think you should. It's really stressing you out. And then I got a job as a casual librarian at the lending desk at Griffith University Library. And I thought, oh my God, this is about sharing information and helping people. And wow, that's actually where I want to be. So I changed my career path and I started to do the Masters in Library Science at QT actually. I ended up at Charles Sturt because I just couldn't manage the working full-time and the night lectures thing, but that's how it went. It wasn't the quality of the course at QT, which is very good. It was just that's a decision I had to make. But I went from these really huge IT lectures of sort of 300 people being deathly quiet and all of them looking about 12 years old to sort of going to these library science lectures of about 30 people sort of aged roughly 30, mid-career changes and really, really noisy and argumentative. And I thought, yes, this is probably the place for me. But that blend for me of IT and library has been really, really useful throughout my career. So I won't mention all the things I've done, but I worked at the National Library for about 8 years. And I did a lot of different things there, but two of the main things were managing the Libraries Australia document delivery database. That's a national database. So I did basically a systems admin role where I was doing a lot of testing with other systems, interoperability testing, so our system can talk to their system. And that's how we actually got the New Zealanders on board. So it's now a New Zealand and Australia service. And I also managed Australian Research Online, which is sort of a service, it's now part of Trove, and it's sort of about, it was harvesting the metadata records from Australian university repositories into that service. So I learnt a lot about metadata, but all that technical stuff about how systems interoperate was really, really useful as well. And that's actually where I met Kate Davis, because she worked at the National Library at that time. And then I worked on an ANZ-funded project there to develop a Trove people and organisations zone where you sort of issue online persistent identifiers for researchers. And that's sort of just a way of having an online identity for researchers. And then I thought, I really like working in that area of universities and that sort of technical area. And so
and I wanted to move back to Brisbane. So we moved back to Brisbane and I worked at Griffith University for a couple of years on other ANZ projects before I ended up working to ANZ. So when I worked at Griffith, I was actually a senior project manager. So this is actually one area that I actually found was a really perfect fit for me, because I managed a team of IT professionals and we built research infrastructure services. So one of the projects we built was called the Griffith Research Hub, and it won awards from Stanford and VALA for innovation in technology, and it was basically about linking objects, research objects, so publications to data, to people, to grants, so that when somebody comes in, they can look at and find all that information. And to me, being an information management professional was actually what made that possible, because I was able to see how that information could be really well used, and therefore how we could describe it in the system. So IT people see it a bit of a different way. It's sort of more like, this technology is cool, let's use it. And my way is, hang on, how can people use that? What's good about that? What can we take and what can we leave? And so as a project manager, you're saying all the time, that's a great idea, we'll do that, but we'll run it past the board first. Or you're saying, that's a great idea, that's going to go on the wish list, you know? So you're sort of managing that, but the perspective you bring is really different. And I've seen other project managers come through who just don't manage the system in the same way, and it just leads to sort of, I think, a much lower quality product actually, especially in the area of research. You just get stuff where they haven't really understood the needs of researchers and the needs of the users. So that's something that we really bring to it. Wherever we've had projects which librarians are on, we have better systems built at the end of it. So anyway, so what do I do now is, I've got this really generic job title, so Senior Data Management Specialist. It's kind of really broad, and there's 2 other people who have that job title, and it kind of means that you're on this road where you're not really sure what you're going to be working on from time to time. It changes. So ANZ, basically it's an organisation set up by the federal government to improve the management of research data for researchers and for research institutions and for the nation. So I don't know what you know about the research area, but traditionally publications are king in research. So if you're an academic and you want tenure, it's a permanent position at the institution, it's all based on the publications that you make. And the data, what happens to that? That sits on USB sticks or in boxes to be found later, or it's thrown away, the equivalent of boxes, USB stick. Yeah. You know, that still goes on, and it's at odds with the money that the government is pouring into research funding, and that the National Health and Medical Research Council and the Australian Research Council are putting into fund. They're putting a lot of money into research. It's too much to just chuck the data out at the end of it, but they don't want to club people on a stick, with a stick, about this. It's just something that really needs to happen. And a lot of journals now, like Nature and PLOS, the Public Library of Science, actually require you to submit your data if you are going to be published. You can't publish unless you submit your data. More journals are saying that, and the reason they're saying that is because people can falsify research and or not be able to justify the claims they make in a paper. So there's a big push towards open government, and there's a big push towards open research and open science, and that's all about research transparency, which means you need the data, but it also means you need other things, which we're starting to plug into that, like software code, because some data can't run without the software, the underlying software. So if you're actually going to build a complete transparent thing, you need to say, here's the researcher, this is the paper they produced, this is the data that it came from, this is the software code that you need to run it, this is the equipment that they use to do that. You know, all these things need to be connected. So I think that's where the world is going in the research area. And yes, so that's sort of, in ANZ we're actually all specifically about the data component, which relates to some of these others, but so we do work in some of those other areas, but it's really about bringing research data to the fore. So last year I sort of had 2 main areas really, and one was running around the country and giving workshops to mostly librarians to train them in research data management, so how to go back to your institution, manage data. So there's only about 40 people who work in ANZ, and there's at least 7 of us who are librarians. So that gives you an idea that, you know, data needs librarians. that example that Alex gave is really perfect. It's the equivalent in the digital form of the box sitting in someone's drawer, and it needs someone to get it out and describe it and make it available, and that's what librarians can do. So that's what I help train them in. It's quite a complex area, as you can imagine. There's a lot of things you need to do. Librarians, I think, are a bit hesitant about their capability to do it, but it's actually right square in our field. So try and give people the confidence that it is actually something that we can do. And the other thing I really worked on last year was ORCID, which is the Open Researcher and Contributor Identifier. It's just a persistent, global, unique identifier for researchers that links all of their research, their publications, their data, their creative works, everything. So that if they leave QUT and they go and work for Griffith, their record stays the same and it can be used in both systems, and people don't have to type stuff again, because the research process is quite ridiculous. If you now do that, you have to go to Griffith and type in your 100 publications before you can get a record here or a profile there, and it really is annoying, and researchers don't like to do anything that doesn't actually constitute research. So that sort of stuff is extra. So this is something which will simplify it, and so basically the way it will work better if everybody agrees to use it and use that one. So my job was actually getting all the stakeholders together. So I worked with the Australian Research Council and the National Health and Medical Research Council and the Council of Australian University Librarians and the Australasian Research Management, so a whole lot of other acronyms. And we got together and said, yes, we want to use this, put out a joint statement saying this is what we want to do, and we got a consortium together. Now we've got 41 members of the consortium, which is almost all of Australian universities, plus a couple of government and research councils and stuff. And this year I've been more technology focused actually, so I've shifted a little bit and I've been involved in organising a hackathon, which was sort of really cool. It was fun. So I was going to Melbourne, and we had it as a Melbourne Science Hackathon, and people got to use all the data sets that were available and do creative things with. So I do a really wide variety of things. I'll talk to you a little bit. So what do you think our data librarian might do? Do you have any ideas? Have a go. Mine data, yeah. Yeah, analyse. Okay.
And use reports on what you found and give it to people who need it.
Yeah, that could be one thing. So actually it's a really wide area, and there's no set description of this is what you might do, and they might be called different things. Like you might be a research support person, but you're actually doing data as a component of that, or you might be a liaison librarian going out to researchers and your data is part of your work. But it's really, really varied. But some of the things you might do, just to whet your appetite, is you might describe it. So you might get to know the metadata needed to describe research data sets, knowing some of the taxonomies, knowing some of the databases that you need to get that data in so that it can be found and discovered. Other things in a public library setting, could you be a data librarian maybe? Yeah, I reckon you could too, because there's a lot of open government data. Data.gov.au has a lot of open government data, and you could help the public to use that. This is money that the Australian taxpayer has given to the government that's given to research. So you could actually help people to get access to that information and be able to use that. And it may be just someone's interest area, it might be a research project, it might be a technology project that they want it for, but you could help them in that way. Other things data librarians do are, like I said, they help build systems that are useful to describe research outputs, so research data. They would have input into, the kind of system requirements, the user requirements, or they might be a project manager for getting that up and running. They might write policy. So universities are all required to have a policy that describes research data, and that needs to be reviewed because the area is constantly changing and some don't have it yet. You might be involved, you might instigate a committee at your university, because libraries actually can't do it alone. They need to do it with the research office, they need to do it with IT, they need to do it with ethics. All of those groups need to be involved if you're going to do it effectively at your institution. and talk to them a lot about how they can better manage their data and do data management planning, that sort of thing. So I will just finish there, but last thing I want to mention is that ANZ is running a program called the 23 Research Data Things. And I don't know if anyone's heard of 23 Things, but this is a research data focus. And anyone can do it, and you can jump in at any time, and you're not required to do 1 to 23. You can do any and all. And there's 3 different levels, so there's sort of starter, intermediate, and advanced. And you can go on Meetup online, and you can contribute to it that way. Or there's some local groups. I know there was someone tweeting about cake at the State Library the other day. It's 23 Research Data Things, so it's Cake Day. So they've got some group going there where they're talking about lots of different groups around the country. This is actually a really big thing. So we've got a lot of people doing this, and ALIA gives you PD points for it, and Call has sponsored it as well. So I'll hand those around if you'd like to join anytime you want to investigate it further. And also, don't feel obliged, but you can take a copy of one of the ANZ newsletter share, because it's actually got interviews with data librarians in this particular issue. So it's a really good issue to have a look at, and that will give you more of an idea of what people do. And then there's a little pamphlet on why research data and librarians should be together. So that's the end of my thanks. Very good.
Okay, let's have just 2-minute break until I check if I can connect the microphone again, okay? Thanks very much. Testing, if you can hear me online. Yes? Cool. Right. Cool, so we're back. Hey, Michelle. Testing again. Okay, do you hear me better? Better? Okay, better? Now? 1, 2, 3. Better? Okay. Do you want to increase it more? Right. What about now? Perfect? Yay! Right. All right. Can we get back to class? Yes? Can we get back from break? So for now, we are having a Q&A session. So if you have any questions for our panel, it's now the time that you can ask your questions. Right? Okay. So we have this microphone here and one microphone there. We will take one question from the face-to-face class and one question from online class. Will it be okay, people online? Yes? There are still 12 people there. Yeah, cool. Cool. So this microphone for panel. Put it here, and this. Can you handle this microphone between yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Who goes first?
Amber, when you were saying that you have to re-promote yourself and your skills, is this sort of like an annual review time, or what sort of?
No,
how often?
probably just more for me when I was doing job interviews.
Oh, yeah.
So starting to work in the area, just saying, look, yeah, I've done this, I know how to wireframe, I know how to do usability testing, research, all the skills that you need for the job. Yeah. And I think the other thing is also, because I work with clients a lot, so kind of every project you're meeting new people and you have to say, you know, I've got these skills and qualifications, so I probably lead more with the skills that I have rather than necessarily the qualifications. But yeah, good. Yep.
So I had a question to, there's about 3 of you that have had a background starting off in public libraries. I'm kind of in that position right now, like right where you guys were at the beginning of your career. Do you, and I suppose at the moment you're more in like desk jobs and you're dealing with not the general public, but with clients as in, you know, government or private sector and that kind of thing. Like, are there times when you kind of miss the interactions that you would have with like the real grassroots level of, you know, the public sort of thing, or do you get a huge yes, shaking their head. So is it, I don't know, once you get through that stage where you're in those high positions and you're like, oh great, now I'm doing other types of work, I don't know, you get beyond that? Because I feel like I would probably miss that myself, but I don't know. Do you?
Yes and no. I'm deeply passionate about the people side of it, which is no secret. I'm in my jobs now, I'm always in the corporate office, and that's, to me, that's not fun, being in the corporate office, but getting out of that, getting out onto project sites and my grassroots people, I suppose, so it's different to a public library grassroots people. I love nothing more than sitting down doing story time with the kids and you know, playing hide and seek around the library and showing them how to find things, and that stuff to me is incredibly valuable, and I do miss that at times. But what I get out of where I am now is I've never met a person who doesn't want to do a good job, and everybody in my area of profession, well, it's not my area of profession at all, scientists, geologists, engineers, you know, I know nothing about it, but I am in awe every single day when I see the things that these people do, and that's really inspiring. And I get that out of the grassroots in working in public libraries as well. So it's different type of grassroots, but it's getting to the front line of people and really seeing the impact that they can make and how can I make a difference to their life. And that to me is the same principle irrespective of where I am.
Just to contribute to that as well, so I've never had a externally public-facing library job or even in the government record-keeping world, I didn't have to interact with taxpayers or anything like that. But every job I've had has been a client service job, just that the clients are internal. And I think that is definitely, you don't lose that when you become an information professional with an inward-facing focus. So if you're ever worried about that, your job is still about servicing clients and having interaction with people. And for the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, I can't remember, it's been so long. I've been travelling to Melbourne every fortnight and having workshops with people because we're developing an intranet at the moment, and I'm like constantly switched on, constantly engaging with people, and my throat is really sore at the moment because all I'm doing are like hour-long presentations where I talk about things and interact with people. So if I ever thought I was going to be like hidden away in an office not talking to people, that's just definitely not the case. I'm like, my throat is so sore right now.
I still get to interact with real people as well. They're just from other government agencies. And so it's very important to maintain the communication and all of that sort of thing. But back in my public library days, the things that I enjoyed the most were helping the people with the technology, because technology was my focus. And I really don't miss the 5 to 12 before the library's about to close questions of my son has an assignment on Wales that's due tomorrow and I need some information. So don't miss those. You know, Wales is a country or Wales is a fish? Yeah. So I don't know if they still teach you the principles of, you know, the reference interview. Very important skills. And those skills, you know, about asking open-ended questions and all that sort of thing can be really valuable when you're dealing with internal-facing clients or, you know, the other type of people.
Just 3 things. For our students, can you please hold the microphone just here, okay, lower. Our panelists, please, can you please say your name before you start? And then we have 2 questions from students online. One is for Natasha. Who are your, I lost it. Who's your client? Is it just the ANDS organization, or are you working with external clients? And the other question is for those of you who have worked in public libraries. Do you see yourself getting back to public libraries? So we can go.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, it's Natasha. So actually, we don't really talk about clients as a term in my work. So I work for ANDS, but we work with a number of other organisations to help make things happen around research data. So they're not really clients in that, you know, we're not servicing their needs, but we are actually working in collaboration. So it's more like collaborators. If you were actually doing traditional data librarianship, so outside of ANDS, you're working at a university, for example, or in a public library, then your clients would be your researchers or your general public. So I hope that answers the question.
It's Chris here. Would I go back to a public library? Yes, I would. I've considered going back to school libraries for similar reasons to you, Meryl, being able to work the school hours and make a difference to the library that otherwise wouldn't have a professional in there. Yeah, I think some of the most fun I've ever had in my career has been working in public libraries, you know, doing fun Christmas setups and finding new things and research topics and stuff. And it's been, you know, I taught a heap of girls out in country Western Queensland to drive a library bus, and we, you know, started a mobile library service because I grew up driving a truck. So, yeah, I'd definitely go back. Love it.
It's Meryl here, and I wouldn't go back. And in fact, I don't currently work in a library, and I probably wouldn't go back to a library. Basically because there's not a lot of roles for systems librarians, and they're all filled. And because I haven't been able to have a continuous career in that area, technology's moved on. I'm not at a position anymore where I'm familiar with a lot of the current technology that's being used. So I'm very happy in my web content role, looking at content strategy and using all of my technology skills in that area. So, yeah, different perspectives.
I've got a question for Chris. You said that part of the challenges of your job, occasionally you have to bribe and cajole people, and so I was just interested in what specifically are the challenges which would cause you to have to do that, say, within your position.
Thanks. It's Chris again. What did I say I was bribing against? Usually it's competing. I work in professional services, so time is money, and chargeability rates, and your charge out targets that you have and your usability targets that you have. So trying to convince someone that managing their information, quote unquote, is valuable as opposed, because it's non-chargeable time, is an exceptional challenge. Alex would feel this one deeply, working in a law firm, by the 6 minutes, seriously, at least we're by the hour. But professional services anyway, it's very, very challenging, and plus something to do with information. I always say to people, you can't kill someone like you would in health and safety. So, there's a fairly compelling reason to participate in health and safety requirements. Environment, obviously, you'll get sued for it. Embezzle something financially, you'll go to jail. So they're fairly compelling reasons to be compliant to the big three ones, the big three. Information, not so exciting. Sharing your knowledge, not so great. So I do tend to bribe with lollies to turn up to my meetings and chocolates and give out some things and pieces of information. It is very much about relationships. If I can send people, a free piece of information that I found, here's a great article that I know will help you out on what you're doing. I'm much like Alex. I do have to do the schmoozing and the talking, and you spend a lot of time getting to know the people to build that trust up. So
but it's really genuine as well. Alex here, it's not like you. I mean, you say schmoozing, but you actually end up being like, I really want to know what's going on with your kids' macrame project or whatever. Like, I'm genuinely interested, and I suspect you are too.
Absolutely, but yeah, so that would be one of the biggest ones. The other one being in the profession that I work in, the engineering side of it, it is largely male dominated. There was a time there when I was a lot younger and I was the young female turning up from the corporate office, so cross in many regards, trying to get information from people and get them to spend time on doing stuff that they couldn't see a compelling reason to do it for. So that would be the biggest one.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Amber here. So I'm just trying to understand the question. So if I was still in practice, I would be looking to forge a career in usability UX. What advice would Amber give budding usability professionals? Okay, gosh, that's a tough one. Well, first of all, skill yourself up in the degree that you're doing now. So if you're interested in getting into that area, make sure you're across all those subjects. So know how to wireframe and prototype and usability testing and IA. There is groups of, it's more a community of practitioners at this stage because it's still a very young industry. So I'd start going to the meetup groups. There's a local meetup group in Brisbane. I'd like to say I go regularly. I don't. I've got a young family, but I try to go. So that would definitely be something that I do, start building some of those connections and get some work experience. If you want some work experience, you're welcome to send your resume to us, and we're always looking for people. Or even if you just wanted to, I don't know if you do placements at QUT, we did at CSU. You could do your placement there. So getting a little bit of experience as well. Hope that helps.
So, who are you with for again? Market research and experience and stuff with this control.
Peak Usability is who I work with. Yeah, so we're a specialised user experience company. Yeah.
My question is for Natasha. Is the data librarian, is that area growing, would you say?
Yes, it's Natasha. Yes, yes, I would say it's growing. I think it's a really new and relatively fast-growing profession. But I think if you're looking for the job ads, there's probably fewer job ads for something called data librarian, and there's a whole lot of others that have data librarianship as a component of the job. So you kind of really have to read the fine print in it, and a number of these jobs are groundbreaking jobs, so they'll be the first time that somebody's been in that position. And I think one of the mistakes institutions make actually is putting a kind of gobsmacking wish list into the position description because they don't really know what that person's going to be doing. So I really want to say, don't be scared off by what the job advert says. You know, ring them up and ask them, is this the first time this position has been advertised, and what kind of things do you think that person will do? Because otherwise, I think we've done this actually. We did a flipped classroom session at Theta conference last year, and we put a lot of job ads in big A3 papers around the wall, all of which had different position titles. Some of them were data librarian, but some of them were metadata specialists, some of them were research support specialists, some of the e-research. I've been an e-research senior specialist, whatever that means. You know, they were sort of everywhere, and we got people to write their comments. Do you think you could do this job? What kind of skills do you think you might need to do this job? And a lot of people put down, I don't think I could do this. And these are people already in the profession, and I think they really underestimated what skills that they could bring to it. And I also think it's that double-edged thing of institutions just putting a whole lot of stuff down without really knowing. And a lot of people, like the e-research senior specialist job that I did at Griffith, a lot of that was actually data management stuff, and the person who did it after me did completely different things in the same job title, because we just brought different things to the role, and the institution didn't really know where it was going to go, and we took it in the different directions according to our strengths. So yeah, so I really want to say it is a growing area, but yeah, just if you're interested in that area, just keep a really open mind, and don't discount yourself from applying for the job before you've really had a chance to think about it and then talk it through with the people who have advertised it.
So how is it different from business? How is it different from a business analyst role, for instance, or are they similar?
There is a component of business analysis in a lot of data management roles. If you're working on a particular system, you might do a lot of business analyst roles, but data librarians tend to have a broader responsibility than just that. And so one thing to watch is you don't become this big bucket of everything being thrown at you at an institution, because people don't really, if anything, someone mentions data, give it to the data librarian. You know, that's, so you can be doing a really broad range of things. So business analysis might be part of it, but you know, writing policy might be part of it, and helping researchers write data management plans might be part of it, and developing training courses and materials for your researchers to train them in how to do this might be it, or you might be working on developing a storage facility for research data at your institution, working out how people can use the big terabit storage that's off-site, off-campus, working with in collaboration with others. So actually I think you need a lot of soft skills as well as the hard skills, and the soft skills are really, I hope you understand the distinction, but hard skills are things like I know how to use a program in SQL, or I know how to write metadata in Dublin Core, and soft skills are like I know how to build relationships with people, you know, and it's those kind of skills. I can be flexible. I can work with a wide range of people. I know how to ask the type of questions that are going to help me design this system better. They're really, really important skills. And if you can get those, and you can get those across at a job interview, you've got a really good chance of getting it, because those are the skills, particularly in data librarianship, that will help get it across the line.
And that was my next question, is how do you get those taxonomies for all the panel? How do you get the taxonomies happening? Do you have meetings about it? Do you send them out a word quiz, or you know, how do you do that? How do you get those that common language? Because what you might read from one person will be totally different from another, especially working in a law firm, because I know lawyers have very definite opinions.
Oh yes. So it's Alex here. I'm just talking to the point of creating taxonomies, and I think there's a few different approaches you can take. You can take a really top-down sort of authoritarian approach, which is, this is what I think is best, and this is what I'm going to socialise with the business, and you're going to use it. And they don't necessarily work that well. At Maurice Blackburn, we take a requirements-led approach to pretty much everything we do in our knowledge, information and technology team. So we let the business decide these things. We use our skills and our knowledge over time that we've built to provide a recommended course of action. So it's essentially kind of what we think, but what we do is we let the business make decisions over big issues. So it sounds trivial. I was having a conversation about area of practice versus practice area. The reason why this is a contentious point in our firm, and the associated taxonomies with it are contentious, is because we have business units, functional business units in the firm that span across different practice areas. So we have one team called RAW, our Road and Work Injuries team. They're based exclusively in Victoria, and they only operate in Victoria, and they have practitioners that may do road injuries and work injuries law, or they might have practitioners that only do one of the other. In Queensland, we have a team called Queensland Personal Injuries, and they cover road injuries, work injuries, and public liability injuries. However, what we want to build, for example, with our intranet, and then look to use in other systems, so make a universal kind of move towards, is area of practice. So a content-driven way of organising information and describing and arranging information. So road injuries is an area of practice. Work injuries is an area of practice. Asbestos injuries, employment and industrial law, aviation, they're all areas of practice. However, we've got people who own the business, equity partners, who've put a lot of time and effort into building RAW as a team, road and work injuries, and that's an internal marketing instrument and an external marketing instrument that they're very invested in. So we let them decide what the best way is, and we say area of practice is probably the best way to take this challenge on, and we've got people from all over the business advising in a steering committee. We've got a knowledge information technology steering committee, but we say we think this is the best approach. We think it provides for growth of both the company and the intranet, and we recommend you go this way, but we let them have it out, and then we let them put conditions on various ways of approaching it. So they're happy to go with our area of practice recommendation, but we've got to talk to some team-based people about how best to describe themselves in the firm. So I always believe you let the business drive those requirements.
Thank you.
It's Meryl here. In a government content management system, we're often required to use government taxonomy systems. So both when I was working on the WorkSafe website and part of the metadata in our current system, particularly in the ABLIS area, which is the Australian Business Licensing Information Service, which we also look after in DTES, it uses the AGLS, and that's a requirement. So parts of our content management system metadata also have structured taxonomy built in. For example, we have a subject selector, and I think it comes possibly from AGLS, and it's all broken down, so people can't type in anything they like. It's a very restricted system, but it enables us to report upwards through the government, how much information we've put in for a particular thing. So, but then there's also keywords which are much more free range, if you like. So we use both a combination.
Okay.
But yeah, there's often prescribed taxonomy systems that we need to use.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. So first I have a question for Amber and then Chris. This whole sort of the aspect that you work in now is something that's really started to appeal to me, which is very strange because I come from a humanities background, and it sort of scared me in our first week talking about IA and all those sorts of things. I had no idea what it was. But I really enjoyed it, and perhaps it would be something I'd like to pursue, but I'm almost having trouble coming to peace with the idea of not following a traditional librarian career. Did you go through that, and did you feel like you sort of had to cut the traditional out of your career life, or
I suppose sorry, Amber here. I suppose when I was thinking about career directions and studying it, I actually became, it was always an open question in my mind. Would I actually want to work in a library, and that was an option, particularly having a young family that could have worked, been quite family friendly. Although I could never find a part-time job in it, but anyway. So I did kind of keep an open mind to that.
But I think particularly with my background in research and and also then the experience that I had in the European Centre, it just kind of my experience fitted within this user experience sector. And I've started working in it, and I have to say it's really, really interesting. And you can still apply your librarian skills. So it doesn't. I don't think it necessarily closes a door, because I think those skills that you get, if you wanted to go back into a traditional library area, you could. So one of I've worked with a few university libraries, and they have people who specialise in user experience within the library. And they just look at, because so much information now is online, like you've got this little search box on your library website represents millions of dollars, and because students are accessing their information mostly online. So that, it still can be relevant. It won't close the door.
Okay, that's a great answer. I like that. No.
Good.
Okay, also, a very strange, overpowering desire for some reason is to be a librarian in the outback. I've grown up in the city, and I'm a city girl, but I have this sense that when I graduate, one of the things I should do is move to the outback as a single young woman and become a librarian there. I was thinking of doing one of my work placements out there. Do you think that would be worthwhile, or do you think I would get the same experience and skills by doing just one in Brisbane? And if so, in the outback, is there any particular shire or council that stands out as somewhere that is worthwhile going to?
That's a great question. It's Chris here. I left the public library service a number of years ago, and I know that there has been a change since then, possibly more than just the one. It used to be part of CLS, Country Library, a country lending service run by public libraries. I don't know if anyone else knows anything about what the current situation is. You didn't get, when I was in it, I didn't have to be degreed, didn't have to be qualified when I first went into the library. It was a definite benefit that I became qualified. Much of your cataloguing was done for you, your collection selection was done for you. You really were there on the administrative front more than anything, I suppose. So in that regard, you didn't really get to put a lot of that stuff into practice. My second library that I went to, which was a rural library as well, was an independent library. So I think it got to a point, there was a cut-off point of about 10 or 15,000 people, and the population would tip you over into being an independent, where the state government would give you the funding. And then that's when you had real independence and ability to administer. You'd do your own buying. So we would do our own buying. Library bus, for example, you could start those initiatives. You would have to go to battle with council and get budget allocations and so forth. And I think that slightly goes back to your other question too, a comment on that. How much do you still take with you, and would you translate it? The skills that I honed when I was in library service and public library service was HR. Had to manage teams, I had to run budgets, I had to do budget allocations and forecasts, a lot of the management side of it. I had to write policies and standards and procedures, as well as the other stuff as well, but they're some of the very core skills that I now still use. I have to run my own budgets, I have to run teams, and all of those things are translatable. So if you were to go into a rural situation, I would try and find a library that was independent. I think there is still a similar structure. It's not exactly the same. Now that there's been amalgamations with the shires as well, they're larger. I think there may be more independent libraries, so they were given their own allocation to spend themselves. So I would try and find that level of library to go to, rather than one of the tiny ones where you wouldn't have as much ability to stretch yourself and try new skills and what you've learnt, obviously. Libraries now all over Queensland are well funded with technology, I believe, so I think you would definitely be able to apply your technology side of it, but you would be given the application, so whether you would get to go down the path of making your own decisions. As for which shire, I could tell you the one I grew up in, but I don't know if that's the best one or not, but so there are a lot of really good ones. It would come down to lifestyle for you, how far you are away from the city, because you probably still want to get back sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you. Perhaps the last question from our online students for all of you. This is for all of the panelists. It seems like soft skills, schmoozing skills are important skills required across the board. How have you learned these skills, formally, informally, or is it something that comes naturally? So we go from
I am not answering that one. Alex here. So I think I've given it a very, thanks Chris, you've put it out, it's not an appropriate word, but I think I'm naturally a very extroverted person, and I get a lot of joy out of just being with people, and I like interacting with people. I love talking with people, so I think part of it is a natural skill. But what you do learn as a human being over time, and you all experience this, is just how to interact with people. And if you're an empathetic person, which I think that's a skill you can develop, but learning how to read people and just pick up on the vibe that they've got going is really, really important, because that helps you immensely. And I can give a few different examples. I've got some really gregarious people that I work with at Maurice Blackburn, and they're really bubbly and bright. And so you go into meetings with them, and you can be quite informal with them, and that's the way you interact, and that's how you get things from, and that's how they get things from you. You know, I've got somebody who I spent 15 minutes the other day talking about how she was trying to sell a car on carsales.com. We had some really great discussions about the weird people that come to your house when they're trying to buy your car, and, you know, all sorts of things. And we were just hooping and hollering. And I've never met her. I've only interacted with her on the phone, but we had a really great old time. There are other people in the firm who are painfully introverted, and so you have to be very delicate with them, and you have to pick up on that. And if you still need them to work with you and collaborate and make things with you, you still need to be able to spend that time getting to know who they are, and getting them to come out of their shell, and getting them to, you know, form a relationship and trust you. So trust is probably the other really big component in relationship making. They will trust you when you deliver for them, especially in a service role. So don't say you're going to do something and then don't do it. Say something, do it, and then they're going to believe that you'll do it again. And then they'll come to you and they'll speak to you more often. So I think as far as the skill goes, learning how to deliver on your promise is something that you can develop. But I think I am fairly naturally blessed with some really wild, outgoing kind of nature, which is really fun for me. Apparently I was called Personality Plus by my grandparents when I was a kid. They didn't give me my name, they just called me PP all the time. So yeah, I'm very fortunate, but I think there are things that everyone can work on, even if you are painfully shy yourself.
It's Natasha, I'll have a go. That's actually a really hard question. Yeah, it's really hard to answer. So I don't know. I think I'm actually an introvert, and I don't do small talk very well, and it's not something I avoid office gatherings and things like that like the plague, but I can put on a good face, and that's really important. And also I'm really goal oriented, so if I know that the purpose of this particular meeting is to achieve this outcome, then I'm actually really good at listening to what people have got to say and asking the questions that will help them reach that kind of decision at the end of the meeting. So it's not going in there and saying this is what we want. Anyone who does that at a meeting is going to fail. It's actually about teasing out what are the barriers, why are people feeling uncomfortable about this, and how can we move forward with this particular thing. And that sort of approach, and building in the trust. So if someone says to you, can you do X, then do it. Don't come back and say, no, I've done you Y because you would like that better. That's actually a big thing in IT. Don't do that. Do give them what they want. Then you can build up the trust over time. So I've found that approaching that, for me, that's actually helped so I've done that at meetings through projects, but also nationally to get all of those groups together. It's actually about building a consensus in which everyone's interests is represented. And a lot of that's about asking questions and making people feel comfortable with the goal that we're trying to get to, and basically being like a scrum master in project management, which is trying to clear obstacles for people so that you can reach that end goal. But I think it's just something that you develop over time. You know, it's not necessarily that you're going to be born like that or you're going to be like that. It's just a skill that you develop over time, and everybody comes at it differently. But yeah, that's my feeling.
It's Chrissy. I couldn't concur more strongly with both of those positions. In the business I'm working at the moment, we are conducting a thing called the CPP, which is the Client Partnership Program, and we've employed an external consultant to come in and train our engineers how to build relationships of trust and partnership. And it has been I'm one of the coaches for it. It's been an almighty challenge to develop those skills in a largely introverted technical discipline. So yes, you can be skilled, but it's interesting to watch. There are a couple of highlight individuals in there who are just born good at it. So a lot of it is natural, but yes, I think you can develop the skills as well. I once was told the analogy that knowledge managers are like the modern day version of the 70s cocktail hostess. And I like to roll that one out a bit, because what you do with the quote unquote schmoozing is you do get to know. So someone walks into your cocktail party and you're the hostess with the mostess. You know what they do, you know where they've been, you know everything about them, you know everybody in that room, and you match Mary up with Georgia over here who knows X, Y, Z, and Tom over here might need to know, Annette over on the other corner who may know something else, and you set people up, and it's about creating those environments. And so for what I do, it's vitally important. But the comment that you made about being in meetings and respectfully getting people to consensus and I'm very goal oriented in that regard as well. I don't like wasting time in meetings. I love conversations and having a good chat, but I love getting to the end and knowing that we've really got to where we need to be, but you have to respectfully take people along with you. So it's a bit of a combination of both, I suppose.
Every job ad that you see will have somewhere in the selection criteria a high degree of interpersonal communication skills. So, yeah, as Alex said, there's some people are just naturally better at public speaking. Other people are much better at getting to the root cause of things and a deeper relationship with someone. So you have to learn to know yourself and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, because you can work on your weaknesses. But don't forget to build on your strengths, because that's what makes you who you are and what will help you to be successful. But there's a lot of courses and things you can do about, learning to communicate better, and, if you get the opportunity to go and do some of those, by all means do them. They can be really great. And that reference interview thing is really useful, and not just for teasing out, was it Wales the country or Wales the animal? Because you give them the wrong information and it's a big problem. But you can apply those skills in just everyday interpersonal relationships as well, active listening, all those sorts of things that you'll learn in that subject.
Okay. Amber here. Last 2 cents would probably be don't underestimate the skills that you already have. Like you probably already have a lot of skills, you just haven't necessarily applied them in the job that you're dreaming about while you're studying really hard for that degree. So I think you probably already got them. And the fact that you've all signed up for a service sector role implies that you've already got that mentality that you want to assist people in providing them a good service. So, but yeah, I'd just reiterate everything everyone's already said. Just practice your active listening skills and rapport building, and you'll be fine.
Well, if there is no other question from our panelists, you had a question?
Yeah.
So perhaps the last question, because, yeah.
One question I want to ask, and Natasha sort of brought this up when you were answering a previous question, was that some of the jobs that we might be going for, and jobs that it sounds like some of you have actually started yourselves, were jobs that didn't really exist before you first went into that role, which sounds very daunting. Do you feel that the training you got from this type of degree or other training adequately prepared you for that, or what kind of strategies did you employ when you first got dropped into a role that didn't necessarily exist before at all, and you're like, okay, I've got to build this from scratch? So, how did you feel at that time?
Yep, so it's Natasha. So actually, I think, all the roles I've been in recently have been sort of build it from scratch ones, but I really like the variety and the challenge that gives. I thrive on having a lot of things to do, and having a lot of changing things around me is okay as well. So, but I think it can be daunting to start, but in this profession, we're about information management specialists. So when you first get in a role, find out as much as you can about what it is that you need to know about. We're really good at that, actually, is we know how to go online and find the information. So one of the things is, I think in my e-research specialist job, it was like map this metadata schema to that metadata schema so that we can ingest it from this system to that system. Well, I knew this metadata schema, but I had no idea about that one. But I knew where to go online because I knew, do the search, find the thing, study the schema itself, and then just put it into practice. And you can't always get it right because metadata schemas are always open to interpretation. They have the descriptions are really open, and you're just going to have to make a decision. So go, okay, we'll go with that one. It's not necessarily going to be perfect because I don't know how other people have interpreted that particular field, but that's what I'm going to do. So you just kind of get in there and get your hands dirty, really, and also taking the initiative as well. So if you think something should be done better or done in a different way, or there's an opportunity to do this, then suggesting those things, because they're your area of strength, can really help as well. So I think we do know where to start, and it's just really getting your hands dirty and giving it a go. And also the other thing I've found really useful is to get support. So if I've been the only person in that job, there's very few people at my own institution who I can talk to, if anyone. So I'm really, I have a large network and I use it. So people in similar roles in other institutions, other people that I'll talk to. And when I go to conferences, I make the most of those informal chats that you have at conferences. So I say I'm an introvert, but I love talking about work stuff. And I'm happy to talk about other things if we're also talking about work stuff. And I make really the most of those opportunities to network with people and find out how they are doing it. So, it's like, oh, we've got to write this data management plan and I don't know whether we should be including this field or those questions. What have you done? That's actually really, you can't get that from your own institution because you're the only one in that role. Go talk to someone else from somewhere else, or go online internationally. I've got a lot of international contacts too. Email that person, tweet that person. They will tweet you back. They will write back to you because they're in a similar position and they want to hear what you're doing as well. So you can get a lot of support that way. So you don't have to feel isolated.
Sorry, the only thing I'd say on that, there are two things I can guarantee you. One, they advertise because they need help in that particular area, and two, you will know more than they do. And that's not to be arrogant, that's dead set serious. If you can walk in knowing that in your heart that you are genuinely skilled in what you're going forward for, you can take them in the right direction. Everything you do will be a step forward.
It's just something that Natasha said about networks. Librarians as a profession are fabulous at sharing information with one another, regardless of institutional boundaries. Law librarians in particular, like their firms might be on opposite sides of a case, but the law librarians will quite happily, they have an email list. I need this particular book, whatever, can somebody provide it? And they help each other out all the time. And I think it's almost one of the things that's inherent in wanting to be in this kind of service industry. We all want to help people connect to either other people or to the information that they need. And so there's a lot of sharing and caring that goes on.
Oh, I think we are done with our questions. Please give the biggest round of applause to our panelists. Thanks very much. I really appreciate, we in IFM 620 Professional Practice really appreciate your time and sharing your ideas with us and thoughts with us. Thanks very much. Yes. Just a quick note about our next big class. It is by Kate, as I said, it's about what, pardon? It's all online. That was exactly what I wanted to say. So our class about the other side of library and information profession next week with Kate Davis, and the class will be fully online, okay? So we don't have any class here, okay? The class next week is fully online. And the folder, Big 4 folder is now on Blackboard. What is that? Nothing here, just online, okay? Yeah. So, online students, any other questions? Yes, the next week class is all online and it is going to be run by Kate. Have a great evening and see you later. Thanks very much, Kate, for facilitating the session.